I've just released my new book titled Ask Phyliss Fannock. I created this book from magazine clippings and scrappy cuttings and fragments of text that I'd collected over many years, and I'd collected from the popular 1970s teen magazine called, if you might remember, Teen Hoops. Teen Hoops was a British-American publication with all of its writers and artists based here in London, but its management arm based over in New York. Teen Hoops had a healthy circulation and was the main rival to Jackie magazine here in Britain, which you may also remember. But when a meddlesome New York manager began interfering with Teen Hoops' day-to-day operations, and in particular the problem pages handled by the beloved agony aunt Phyliss Fannock, a transatlantic war of words began, which was played out in front of a very large audience because Phyliss posted details of this dispute in her weekly advice columns for her teenage audience to see. The magazine soon became more famous for the highly publicised feud than it was for its actual commitment to fashion, music and lifestyle, and although their circulation figures strengthened during the turf war period, the magazine was eventually brought down by this angry quarrelling. So, if you remember Amazin Raisin bars and Old English flavour Spangles and bubblegum tattoos and chiclets and sherbert pips and Tooty Frooties, then you might also remember Teen Hoops for girls, and you may also vaguely remember the story of this aspiring American manager who threatened the editorial freedoms of a popular Fleet Street writer who had championed countercultural ideas since Woodstock. Do you remember the bell-bottom days of the early 1970s? Because this story is set in 1972. Do you remember Jason King? Do you remember the Chilites? Do you remember Beech Nut Chewing Gum? Do you remember Top Deck Lemonade Shandy? Do you remember Vesta Prawn Curries? Do you remember Quink Ink? And do you remember fruit-flavoured polos? If you don't, then dip into a world that seems, looking back at it actually, quite preposterous. And ask yourself a question: if your manager interfered with your daily activities, would you have done the same thing as Phyliss under those same circumstances? Would you have allowed her to erode trusts and risk your ambitions, or would you have stood up and fought? And as we all know, Phyliss was determined to fight, and she reported the ups and downs of that spat on her weekly pages. Although perhaps deep in her heart, the English commentator knew that her summer of love was over, and this new boss, Miss Vanderpamp of Long Island, New York, represented an unstoppable force that would herald a capitalist future, which would eventually overwhelm everything that Phyliss had campaigned for in the swinging 60s. So here's the story of Phyliss, and it's compiled from dusty old clippings that I've collected since the 70s. And in these letters, we can see how Phyliss was in danger of being tormented each day by moral inconsistencies, especially as she started to launch her counterattack against Miss Vanderpamp. And we also witness her collapse under pressure, and we begin to guess the great secrets that she was trying to hide. And it was a weapon of last resort. And when she faced ruin, she hit the detonate button. In this book, you will see how her world explodes.